Hello, and welcome to the Adobe Think Tank. We're coming to you live from the New York Times New Work Summit. We're talking about Gen Z and the future of the digital workplace. I'm Deanna Adams with Adobe, and I have with me here today Robert Derow with BCG. You're a partner with BCG Digital Ventures. Thank you so much for coming. It's glad to have you with us. So if we think about Gen Z and consumers, we think about the consumerization and how Gen Z is really influencing the workplace of the future. Talk to me a little bit more about that, and how are they making that influence and that change?
Yeah. I mean, generally speaking, I don't see too many major differences with the different generations, and we have Gen X, Y, Z working on the team. The one thing I think that's going to be massive is communication. So you're seeing folks with a lot of video, a lot of shorter formats, and I think this has happened over time. I always joke that I was an early adopter of the 2-sentence email, but I think you're seeing communication becoming more fluid and more snackable, if you will. Yeah. And then I think you're starting to see, hopefully, this emergence of and full adoption of video.
Yeah. So
I always joke that messaging platforms have been around for the last 20 years. We used to use AOL and Messenger, and now Slack is kind of the new flavor. And video conferencing has been around as well, but I think you haven't really seen it take that full mainstream, so much to the extent that you don't need to be co-located, where you can create, either using Google Hangouts or what have you, really seamless communication via video. And I think that'll change the workforce over time.
I totally agree, especially if we think about the combination of Gen Z wanting to have human interaction and that collaboration, but yet at the same time looking for tools to help them get their work done more efficiently, right? So we have that distributed workload, but yet wanting that human interaction. And so you're absolutely right. If I think about that, conferencing is a really interesting piece.
I think the workplace will be interesting to see, or I should say the physical workspace will be interesting to see what dynamic plays. I know through my career it was striving for the corner office, then it was the open floor plan, and then now it's at BCG Digital Ventures, we don't have assigned seating. We have venture rooms where we assemble, and then we have cohort rooms where we go back to our specialties to kind of get thought leadership and partnership. Interesting to see how shared spaces will evolve in the future, if more private spaces or smaller breakout sessions will emerge. I think everyone went really open really quickly, and then now you're starting to see a little bit of this contraction back. But I think you're right. I think it's that, how do they want that human connectivity, but also want all the friction removed through the digital engagement. Their customer journeys have been very much digitized and very much frictionless free because of all the great digital products over the last couple of years that they've been highly engaged with.
That's exactly right. And that almost leads to the next question as we think about leadership and preparing for Gen Z and preparing for this future workplace. We know from a technology perspective, there's a lot of things that go into making that happen. But talk to me a little bit more about what leaders need to do to prepare for this new generation and this new way of work.
Yeah. I mean, it's another one that I feel like a lot of the tried and true tenets, or at least the ones that I've applied as a leader, have worked well across multiple generations. So regardless, So I think for me, it's really about autonomy, empowerment, and giving guidance, and then providing feedback and candor, but then also giving the resources they need to evolve and be successful. So for me, it's very much around not micromanaging. It's about creating opportunity, and then letting the best minds kind of do the job. So I don't see that changing as much. I think maybe some of my new hires, some of my younger new hires have been kind of more inclined to request feedback and guidance, which I find interesting, but it could be also just a sign of tenure. Right. I don't know if the characteristic of the generation in and of itself is the dominant characteristic to change the management style. I think it's other things, exposure, tenure, past experience, things like this that tend to be bigger indicators of where you should change your leadership style or adjust. Because I kind of feel like your top performers from any generation are going to have similar characteristics. Yeah,
exactly. And so we've talked a little bit about consumerization. We've talked a little bit about what the workplace would look like and leadership. Let's get to the technology thing. Like, what are you seeing in technology today that's leading into the future that you think might expand in the future? You know, one example we always think about, which is pretty common, is Uber really disrupted how we got from point A to point B, and is changing. Now we have a new generation that may or may not own a car.
Yeah.
So if we apply that kind of disruption and thinking to the workplace and technology, what are some of your thoughts on how that might change?
Oh man, I kind of feel like I feel a little bit that a lot of the past formats, I joke that when I first started working in the early 2000s and I had to send a fax, and I said, oh, yeah, I can't wait in 5 years time, 2 years time when the fax machine is dead. And unfortunately there's still some opportunities to send a fax, unfortunately. So I don't know around, I would have to go back to video, I would say, and it's like if video can create an opportunity where you can have a true distributed workforce,
yeah,
and that distributed workforce can have the same career opportunities as someone who is co-located, I think that'll be incredibly disruptive. So right now, I think there's still a bit of stigma if someone's going to work remote or you're not physically present. You know, I would like to see a world where that physical presence isn't required,
yeah,
and you can truly disrupt, and someone 1,000 miles away can have the same career opportunities as someone who's in the headquarters. And I think this is really interesting from a globalization perspective as well. And
yeah,
you're seeing in certain industries like healthcare with telemedicine, where you can truly decentralize the entire ecosystem. Mobility as well, so like Tesla pushing an update. So these types of things, as digital creates true globalization and the digitization of things like going to see the doctor, I think that'll
really change
how
people change. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us here today. We have really appreciated to hear your thoughts, and really wanted to thank everybody for watching. Stay tuned. There'll be more coming from the Adobe think tank at the New York Times New Work Summit.